I have been fortunate enough to be able to do a ton of different things at my department, which also included working drugs and gangs back in the early 90s as an investigator. And then in the 2000s, I doubled back as the supervisor of that same unit. And what I've been telling people lately is that, people ask me, what do you think about what's been happening? And I said, well, that's a pretty big question to ask me. I can tell you that, like everything, law enforcement changes throughout the years, obviously, and there's things that change, there's laws that change. But the last 4 years, in that compressed time of 4 years, there have been more changes that have occurred to law enforcement with the laws than in any other time in my career.
Yeah.
And then I tell people, look, I have seen a ton of stuff in my career, some stuff that no human being should ever see.
Yeah.
And nothing that anyone should ever have to see, but it's the profession I chose. But I can tell you one thing. Aside from a gruesome murder scene, I have never, ever seen anything like fentanyl. Never.
Yeah. I've been immersed in addiction for 51 years, whether it was my experience or the experience of my family. I was born into that life. And never in my entire 51 years of life have I ever seen anything like what has been going on over the last, technically 4 years, really. I mean, we've seen a massive increase in specifically the last 3 years alone. I want to say the first fentanyl death I experienced was somewhere around 2017, a friend of mine, but it has grown exponentially just over the last 3 years. Can I ask you this, as law enforcement officer, in the last 4 years, as policies, ordinances, and laws have changed in Washington state, do you feel like these massive, abrupt changes have contributed to community safety?
They have not contributed to community safety, in my opinion. And while I want to give respect to those who are in elected positions. They have put themselves out there, they have gotten themselves elected, and I believe with all my heart that they also believe that they are wanting to do the best for people or communities. Whoops, so sorry. They are well-intentioned. However, I believe while as well-intentioned as many of them are, there are things about which they are uneducated, and there's just no way that they can be educated enough unless they are working in this field. And when someone says, I don't want people to be in the criminal legal system because it is going to detrimentally affect the rest of their life because they have a possession of a controlled substance charge in their file. While I agree with that in theory, if you have that possession charge and then you get yourself clean and sober and then you work towards getting that expunged based on everything that you have done, then that thing is gone off your record.
Yeah.
However, what we're seeing now is this works. I've lived through the end of crack and the beginning of heroin and through heroin and methamphetamine. And while those drugs gripped people, as you well know, and it gripped people to the point where they can't necessarily help themselves, I felt like we were always able to reach them at some point in time.
Whether to remove them from their destructive path, not for just a small period of time.
Even if we just booked them. But we also were able to get to them mentally. Like I always used the back of my car when I was driving someone to jail or to the hospital as a way as they were a captive audience.
Yeah.
And I would tell somebody sitting in the back of my car, knowing they're going to go to jail, knowing they're about to hit withdrawal like you wouldn't believe, I would always tell them, listen, you can do more, you can be more, and you're worth it.
Yeah.
This is not you. This is not what you deserve. You don't deserve to be this way. I understand that there's things that have contributed to you and your addiction, but you can get out of it. If you are strong enough to survive on the street to seek dope every day, then you are strong enough to kick it. And you will find that life, once you get the tools, is easier than to struggle to try and get dope all the time. What I can tell you, Ginny, is that I don't feel like I can do that anymore with people who are addicted to fentanyl.
They're missing
fentanyl has grabbed them and it will not let go. And the way I explain it to people who know nothing about fentanyl, so council members, I've talked to representatives and senators, and I've talked to my own friends who have no clue about addiction. And I will say to them, look, picture the time that you were in, something scared you so bad that you were literally in fight or flight. Your body was in that fight or flight. You were either going to deck someone or you're going to sprint away running. And think about how you felt after that moment. You were tired, you were exhausted, you're out of breath. You felt like you sprinted 100 yards when you didn't even move.
Yeah.
Near accident right there. That is what heroin does to someone's, or fentanyl does to someone's brain.
Yeah.
It puts them in a fight or flight because fentanyl is that opioid that is physically addicting. So it changes your brain chemistry and it makes your brain feel like you will die without your next dose. So whereas heroin, you were gripped into it and you were fiending for that next load, fentanyl is, I think, 1,000 times stronger in that it has changed your brain to believe that your body will die without fentanyl.
And quickly.
And so how do we break into that? And so then when, on top of that now, we no longer have a way to enter someone into treatment through the criminal justice system.
There's no incentive.
There's no incentive for them to do it.
We've removed the ability to use criminal charges as an incentive. And I want to say this too, and this is where my frustration with the naive decisions on our leadership is that, although well-intended, we have gained enough information about what didn't work with our criminal justice system, and then now we're going way over to this other sort of section. We can't just not remove them, but we have developed some stuff in the late 90s up into the 2000s, drug courts, right? Where you could incentivize, where a person didn't end up with the criminal charges.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And so now I do believe that if we developed some more of those diversion type of programs where incarceration did begin the process, where a person is able to gain their mental clarity, and then we put a few more components to address some of those other underlying causes, I think we would have had, more efficacy. But at this point, even with a gross misdemeanor, we're not incentivizing anything because nobody cares. And in regards to Bellingham on its own, like, you guys don't even have the jail capacity currently to take action with a gross misdemeanor.
We can, if we need to book somebody, we can, but a gross misdemeanor, drug possession, or property crime is going to get them booked and released.
Right.
So while that enters them in, it gets them into the first step, what our prosecutors are finding, and what people don't understand about the Blake fix, the second Blake fix that they did in May, is that prosecutors don't still have all of the tools to do what the legislation has told them to do. Because while we can arrest and we can handcuff and we can search and take the drugs away and we can cite somebody, the other side of the thing has not been developed yet as to what they're going to do on how they're going to get people in. And you said it right, Ginny. Many people, let me ask you this. Did you care about a gross misdemeanor back in the day?
I did not. Right. I didn't care about a felony, really, because, and this is the thing, and I was thinking about this yesterday. I could count on felony charges giving me respite. I could count on it.
And now that statement right there is what I've tried to tell people so many times. Now, where I see it is that statement is huge. Coming from somebody who has lived experience, when you
17 felony convictions, 30 years of addiction.
When you say, I was counting on a felony charge because that allowed me to take respite, that should tell people that you couldn't do it on your own. You needed something or someone. I have so many people, because I've been around for 30 years, like the kid, I don't know if you saw, but there's a young man that walked up to me in the lot.
Yes.
He knows me from the time that he's been 12 or 13 because we chased him around when he was 12. He's in his 40s now.
Yeah.
But there's so many people when I'm in public, they'll walk up to me and they'll say, "You don't recognize me, do you?" And I said, "No, probably not." I have to be honest.
Yeah.
Because many of these, they were 12, 13, 14 when I was dealing with them, or they were high school, or they were very, very much addicted, and I don't have the slightest clue what they look like now with meat on their bones, right? Healthy. And so they say, "I'm so-and-so, and you arrested me back in the day for heroin." And so I always say, "Oh, how are you doing? It's fantastic." And they just say, "I just want to say, I wouldn't be here today if you hadn't arrested me."
Yeah.
And if people don't understand, I get goosebumps and chills just even saying that. And I'm thinking about several specific people who have said that to me. But people don't understand that we care a great deal and we want people to get clean. But we also have to be the tough parent who is going to hold people accountable. And if you're going to use drugs, I'm going to arrest you. For 18 months.
If you do this, this is going to be the consequence to that choice.
Do you have any idea? I found myself walking one day, saw a woman sitting, literally just inhaling fentanyl, sitting at in the driver's seat of her vehicle, parked. I walked up to the window and she had a pill on the foil and then she had 3 pills laying on her console.
Yeah.
So I just looked at her and I said, I know you have fentanyl, just hand it to me. And she did.
Yeah.
And then I was standing there with the fentanyl in my hand and I literally had to think about, okay, wait, I have fentanyl in my hand. I got to put it someplace where it's safe. I had gloves on, but I have to...
Yeah, I'm glad. I was like thinking to myself, oh my gosh.
No, I had gloves on because I saw the fentanyl. So I put gloves on. So I have the fentanyl when she gave it to me. And I literally had to stop and think and go, oh, okay, I can't...
Now what do I do with it?
I can't actually do anything with this.
Yeah.
And I literally reached in my pocket and gave her that card. I said, I know you have an addiction problem. I'm going to note this as one of your times that, we contacted you with drugs, but here's your card. And I walked back to my car and I was like, this feels like a dream. I've been a cop for 30 years and I'm walking around with 4 fentanyl pills in my hand that I'm going to go to the police station and throw in to be destroyed. And I can't, this person is A, now going into withdrawals because I took her fentanyl, and B, I can't.
And she's behind the wheel of a car.
Yes. And I can't do anything to arrest her.
Right.
Because she was parked in a parking lot, so it's not even something I could have arrested for, thinking that she was high on drugs. And the only thing I did is I stood there for 10 minutes and I just talked to her about all the places that are available for her, that she doesn't have to live like this. She was literally 2 blocks away from our mission.
Yeah.
And so I guided her there, but it was so disconcerting as a 30-year police officer to walk away and go, I have fentanyl in my hands. And I literally, there's not even a charge for that at this moment because courts have said it's unconstitutional.